Good morning, everyone. Welcome back to ParaMystic Podcast. I'm your host, Kristina Bloom. Today, we're going to be discussing the differences between residual and intelligent haunting. But before we get to that, I have some announcements that we need to make here. First of all, we at All Access Network TV have lost one of our family members this week. Shane McLean suddenly passed away of an illness, and he will be sorely missed in the whole network. It's leaving a hole in the entire network, but particularly on Wicked Wednesdays when his show was on in the evening. And we all miss Shane deeply, and we ask you to hold his family and his friends in your hearts and send love to them as they are going through this very, very difficult time. So thank you very much for doing that. And the next thing that we have is much more exciting. Sorry, I just had to get rid of something in my window here. Glenn Bodice and I have released our second episode of Into the Void, and that is now available on YouTube. The episode is available on Glenn's YouTube channel. It will be available on mine. I'm still figuring out some stuff with the technical end, but it is available on his YouTube channel. I've shared it on my Facebook channel, and it will also be going out on the rest of my social medias. So keep an eye out for the Into the Void. Oh boy. Yeah. It is the castle spirits. Forget the name of the show, but it is in this episode. Glenn and I visit Conisburg Castle and talk with the spirits of the workers there who made the world go round. We talked to a blacksmith, we talked to a couple of stewards, we talked to a woman who channeled through me, who was an assistant to the queen there, who helped with setting up parties and that sort of thing. And what they shared, what life was like for them living at the castle when it was up and running. And now it is a ruin, but it's a beautiful ruin and it's beautifully kept. So check out that episode on Glenn Bodice Spiritual Medium. Facebook, yes, Facebook and YouTube channels. Also, this evening, I will be teaching a class online, Astral Traveling to Visit Both Aliens and Dragons. This is going to be a fun class. It's a class that was requested by the last class that we had about spirit guides, and they are excited the people who are coming are excited to jump in, and there is plenty of room for everybody because it's an online class. You can find that on Facebook. The link has been put up in chat, so you will be able to find that on Facebook and get registered for that. The registration link is right there in the event posting. All right. Links for both the show and the class are going to be in the events. Also, if you would like to make an appointment with me for a private reading or past life regression, you can book that appointment on my website at www.kristinabloom.com. Just scroll down on the main page and there is a form to fill out to request a time. After you request a time, I will receive an email and respond back to you to either confirm or ask for a different time, because my schedule's all over the place and holding regular office hours is just not working for me. So that's the way that I will schedule that for you to get a private reading. So I'm looking forward to hearing from some of you about that. Okay, so let's talk about residual hauntings. A residual haunting plays out like a movie. It's an energetic memory loop that plays over and over and over and over. And a lot of times during paranormal investigations, we run into these where spirits are just doing whatever it was that they did when they were alive in human bodies. So as we're watching this, it plays out almost like a home movie, at least that's the way I see it. Just playing out where they're just doing the same thing over and over, whatever it was that they did. And I have a couple of really good examples of that. One was I was called to a house, someone's home in northern Wisconsin, where they had these people had put up a brand new play set that they had bought for their 7-year-old son. And every time they put it up in the backyard, right outside the kitchen window where mom could look out and keep an eye on him. But every time he played there, he got ridiculously angry. Like, he would just go into a rage, and they couldn't figure out why. Like, they were asking the little boy, "What's going on? Why are you so angry about this play set?" And he just kept saying, "I don't know. I just feel angry." So he stopped playing on it, and the mom called me and said, "Can you help us out here? Like, what is with this play set? We bought it brand new. It wasn't even a used play set. We bought it brand new and built it ourselves." So I went there, and I was standing in the kitchen looking out the window like the mom does. And as I'm looking out the window, a film, like a movie, is developing in front of my eyes. The play set was kind of fading into the background, and this scene was playing out. And it was a scene of an old man beating a child until the child stopped moving. And that's the residual energy that their child was playing in. It was horrible to watch. I really, like, years later, it's still stuck in my brain. It was such a horrible, horrible thing to watch. So I went outside, and I just kept watching because I needed to understand what was happening. And as I got closer, I could not only see what was happening, but I could hear that what was happening. And the old man kept saying, "Why won't you leave me alone? Why won't you leave me alone?" And the kid was fighting back just enough to keep provoking, just enough to keep provoking. And he just kept saying, "Why won't you leave me alone?" And he was trying to push the child away. He was hitting him, trying to get him away from him. And the kid just kept coming back for more, coming back for more. And eventually, the child stopped moving, and the old man sat down and cried. And this is a scene that just kept playing out over and over and over. And I was just watching this, and I thought, something can be done about this. So I asked the question to my spirit guides, how can we help the situation? How can we help these souls stop repeating this activity over and over again? And what they said was that they could break up the fight. So my spirit guides stepped in and separated the two and sent the boy towards me. So as the boy was coming towards me, it was like the residual broke and I could communicate with him. I said, "Who do you want to come and get you?" And he said he wanted his grandmother to come and get him. But before I called his grandmother, I asked him what was happening here. And he told me his whole story. He was being horribly abused at home. He couldn't stand going home anymore, but they were in a very isolated area, very small town, nowhere he could run. Every time he tried, somebody sent him back home to where he was being beaten. And he'd had enough. So this was his way of dying by suicide, was to prevent this old, as he called him, this old drunk bastard who had a temper. And he provoked him into ending his life so that he could escape what was happening at home. And the tears were just streaming. I couldn't, like, it was just so sad that I couldn't stop crying. But I did call for his grandmother to come and get him. And she did. She came in spirit form, and she took his hand and said, "It's all okay now." And she took him off into the light. And then I went and I talked to the old man, and he just kept crying, "I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry. I didn't want to do it. He wouldn't leave me alone. I didn't want to do it." And eventually I just let him work it out. And after that, I said, "How can I help you?" And he said, "You can't. I'm a lost soul." I said, "Nobody's a lost soul. Nobody is a lost soul. Who would you like to come and get you?" He said, "Nobody's coming for me." I said, "Can I call an angel for you?" He said, no angel's going to come and get me. And I said, can I call Jesus for you? And he stopped and looked at me. And the sadness in this man's eyes as he was crying is just something that haunts me to this day. He didn't say anything, so I did. I called for Jesus to come and get him, and in my experience, Jesus never says no. He's never said no when to come and help a soul. And Jesus came and took him by the hand and said, it's okay, my friend, we can go now, and took him off to the light. And that is one story of a residual haunting that turned into an intelligent haunting, which I have never heard anyone express that can happen. So I was very, very grateful that not only my spirit guides, but the grandmother and Jesus both stepped in to help free these souls. After that, the family had no more problems with the child playing on the playset. That energy had been released. So that is actually why I do what I do. I'm not in this to try to prove anything with science. I'm not in this for the thrill of it. I'm in this to help people. That's why I do readings. I do readings to help people. That's why I help people with their land and home problems, because it's so important. First of all, for those spirits to be released. Nobody should have to be stuck in eternity in that type of a situation. But second of all, to help the families who are still here on earth and to help them remove all of these negative energies that people live with. So if you're interested in that, there's all kinds of information in the chat on how to get a hold of me. The second residual haunting that I wanted to give you an example of actually came from my mother. After we graduated from high school, she went back to college and she got her degree in alcohol and other drug addictions counseling. For her, I forget what it's called, but she had to, as part of her training, work in a residential treatment center. And she was working the overnight shift in a residential treatment center. And she was telling me that every morning, early morning, around 2 o'clock, she would be sitting in the office on the first floor after doing her rounds and checking on everyone. And then she would hear a squeaking mop bucket above her on the second floor, like clockwork, every single day. Every single day she would be hearing that, or every single night. And the mop bucket would squeak along, stop. She'd hear a plop on the floor, and then the mop bucket would pick up again and keep moving, because the gentleman who had worked there when it was an active nursing home, who worked there as a maintenance worker, that's when he would mop the floors every morning at 2 o'clock. And apparently he loved it there because he never left. She didn't try to pass him on or do anything like that. She just told me about the story. But that was another example of a residual haunting, when someone is just doing what they always did, right on schedule every time. So that was another example of a residual haunting. So let's get into intelligent hauntings. Maybe 8-10 years ago, I was living in a farmhouse that had been broken up into apartments. My husband and I were living there, and we had window air conditioners because there was no central air in this 1800s farmhouse. We lived on the second floor in an apartment there on this farm, and it was a beautiful place to live. It was a little, like, the barn was older, and there was a lot of really great stuff that happened when we lived there. It was just wonderful. But the owner of the building had passed away. And after he passed away, well, first of all, let me just say this. He loved sports. He was in his 80s. He loved sports. He never missed a Brewers game, a Packers game, Wisconsin sports. That was his whole deal. So after he passed away, and this was in the summer, so baseball season, I was sitting in my office, and there was an air conditioner in the window that was running. I was trying to work on something, and I kept hearing this baseball game. It was driving me crazy. Like, I am not a sports person, and if I was going to watch a sport, I'd be watching it, not listening to it. because I just don't care enough to visualize it. But I kept hearing this baseball game, and it sounded like it was actually happening. So I went online and I checked the Brewers schedule, and yeah, they were playing an afternoon baseball game that day. So like I said, I was working, I was on my computer, and this game just kept going and going and going, and it was really disruptive because the game was actually louder than the air conditioner itself. I'm like, "Why is this happening?" And then it occurred to me, Bob loved baseball, and nobody was living in his apartment at that time, so he wasn't there was nothing running for him to easily listen to his baseball game. So and he had just passed away, he hadn't figured out, like, how to turn everything on and all of that. So, he was listening to it in my apartment, and we had an air conditioner running also in the primary bedroom, so, I'm like I finally just said, "Bob, please, please, can you go in the other room and listen to the baseball game? I have work to do, and I'm trying to get it done, but this is disruptive." Just that fast. I stopped hearing the baseball game until I walked past the master bedroom to go to the bathroom, and it was playing in there. So he was in there listening to the baseball game. And that is an example of an intelligent haunting because he interacted with me, he listened to what I say, and he obliged and went in the other room. So that's a really that to me that's a sweet example. I really liked Bob. He was a good guy. You know, he was just a really nice person. And that was just really fun for him to be able to just hang out and listen, you know? So it was cool. My other example of or at least another, I have so many, but I just chose a couple of each. So Starvation Heights. Starvation Heights was a place in Olalla, Washington, where, Dr. Linda Hazard, who was a self-described physician, uh, murdered people. She starved them to death. That's why it's called Starvation Heights. But she concocted a scheme where she convinced rich people that they needed to do this fasting cleanse. This fasting cleanse, it was going to save their lives. It was going to make everything better. And the thing is that there's no evidence that any of these people were sick. She was just after their money, which, you know, that still happens today sometimes. But she convinced these people to come and stay at her sanitarium where they would, you know, be able to have medical observation while they were doing their fasting. It was completely safe, all of this. And what she would do was eventually she kept them fasting for so long that they starved to death. And, you know, I went on this investigation with my former group, my former paranormal team, and we did a cleansing of the building, and Dr. Hazard was there in that building. Her spirit was there, along with many others. But this place, I'm just going to give you some background on it because it was horrible. It was horrible. I mean, the house was old and falling into disrepair. The current owners had built a new house on the same property and were going to knock down that house, but they wanted to make sure that all of the spirits that were stuck had the opportunity to leave. So as we were there as a team, and we were quite a big team, we had 5 psychics, and we had I don't even know, like, how many tech people were there. I have no idea how many tech people were there, maybe 10, I'm guessing, and we all camped out there. We all brought, you know, sleeping bags and camped out there. But when we did and we went into the basement, and the basement of this house that was used as a sanitarium had a dirt floor. Again, very, very old building, had a dirt floor, and there were still cages in the building. There were still cages where and dirty, thin mattresses where she would put people who tried to escape. So, you know, these people are paying to be there, and she's holding them prisoner, you know, as they're trying to escape. Also, in the bathroom of this house, there was an old ironing board, and that's where she did the autopsies on the people who starved to death. So this place had some really heavy energy, really heavy energy. And it was just very, very intense type of a situation. So the psychic team, which I was on, we opened up a portal in the basement to allow any spirits who wanted to go through it and escape from this to go through to the light. And this was a part that just brought tears to my eyes because we opened up the portal for the entire land, for the entire piece of property, which went down into a ravine behind the house. And as we opened up this portal, all of these spirits, even from the ravine, like old, ancient native spirits that were still stuck there from wars between native tribes, and even some animals that went. And the way that I envisioned it was this big staircase. It looked like kind of a marble staircase to me, but where these spirits would come up and they would start going up the stairs. And at the beginning, they were crawling. They were just kind of weak and crawling up the stairs. And as they got higher up and more into the higher vibration, they would be standing up and walking. And some of them came back to help others who wanted to escape this. But now I'm going to back up the story a little bit. And before we got to that point, when we had opened the portal, but we hadn't started, people hadn't started releasing yet, I had my handmade drum and I was walking through the entire building, just playing a heartbeat on the drum, just boom, 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 walking up through the building and just allowing, just saying, anyone who wants to leave, we have opened a portal for you to leave. You're free to go. You're free to go. And this doctor, Linda Hazard, got right up in my face, like right here, and just screamed, "Stop that infernal racket." Now, I know she was in spirit, but I felt that spit hit my face. I felt it. It was a cold and damp day anyway, but I felt that hit my face. And I said, "You're free to go. I'm not going anywhere. This is my house." "Okay, but we're letting everyone else go." And she was very, very angry about that. So that was my experience with her as an intelligent haunting, where she just really got right up in my face. And also, that is the only time I've been injured by a spirit, because I was sick for months afterwards. It turned into a sinus infection. I got really, really sick. It went systemic, which sinus infections typically don't do. But yeah, I got very, very sick from that interaction afterwards, after we were done with the investigation and the release. But going back to watching these others go up the stairs, it was so beautiful. I still feel it in my heart. It was so beautiful watching them, and some turning around and waving and thanking us for opening this portal and helping them go. The people who owned the property did not want anyone stuck there. So that's why they asked us to come in and do that. That part was a beautiful, beautiful experience. And again, intelligent haunting. So those are two examples of a residual haunting versus an intelligent haunting. An intelligent haunting, they will interact with us. In a residual haunting, it's like watching a movie. But again, I have been able to interrupt a residual haunting with the people at the boy and the old man at the play set, and be able to help them release and go their separate ways into the light, and all is forgiven and moved on. So there's times when that can happen, where you can turn a residual haunting into an intelligent haunting and help those spirits release. So also the same spirits, like you can have one spirit who can in some ways be residual and in other ways be intelligent. And I'm going to use my grandmother as an example for this. I know I did a show a few weeks ago talking about my grandparents' house. and my grandmother's shoes walking down the stairs in the mornings. And that happened for a while. I'm going to say maybe a few months after she passed, that happened every day. She would get up, and for some reason, my grandmother always wore shoes, whether she was in the house or not. She always wore shoes. And I would hear her shoes walking down the stairs. And if I got up and looked, I could see her shoes walking down the stairs, going from the upper level down. So that was her residual part of it, but also the intelligent part of it, where when she switched the tablecloths at Thanksgiving, that was an intelligent move. That's not something that happened more than once. It was an intelligent move. Also, I would hear her talking to my grandfather, and sometimes I think he heard her, and sometimes I don't know that he did, but he had Alzheimer's. So she was always with him, always with him. And it was confusing because I looked so much like her that sometimes he thought I was her. But she did both residual and intelligent haunting. So both of those things can happen at the same time with the same spirit. And I think a lot of times our brains try to go black and white on everything. We try to go, it's either this thing or that thing, but sometimes it can be both things. And I think that that's pretty amazing that it can be both things. My grandmother went through her morning routine of walking down the stairs after getting dressed every morning. And I could hear that every morning. So, it was kind of interesting to me that was my first encounter with that type of dual haunting, with someone who had been in a body and left a body, but now does both intelligent and residual hauntings, and probably emotional hauntings too. She loved her house. Oh my goodness. I'm just going through my notes here because I don't want to miss anything. That's okay, Anthony. You can listen to it later. So another thing to remember is that if a spirit doesn't want to talk to you, they're not going to. It is entirely up to them. If they don't want to talk to you, they're not going to. An example I may have given before, I don't remember if I have or not, but I was conducting a paranormal investigation as part of a retreat, teaching my intuitive view class. And we were in the basement of an old building, an 1800s building that was also a retail center. A friend of mine worked there and was able to get us in to do an investigation. And so I had my class there, and I had invited in some other paranormal investigators from that area to come in and do the presentation and to show how to do a paranormal investigation. And they had set a K2 meter in the middle of a circle. We were all in a circle in the basement, and had set a K2 meter in there, and he was inviting the spirits. This other paranormal investigator was inviting spirits to come and talk. And I was watching the whole circle, but on the outside of the circle on the other side was a spirit standing there with his arms crossed, just like this. And he's like, I'm not talking to him. I don't like him. I'm not going to talk to him. I'm not going to do that. I'm not going to make that device go off. I'm not going to. I'm just going to stand here and talk to you. So he was talking to me, but he would not talk to that device. He refused to talk to that device. And that's an example. They can refuse to talk to us. If they don't want to, they won't. And if they don't like your energy, they're not going to talk to you. It's that simple. So there is that too, where just because your machines aren't showing something doesn't mean that there isn't spirit activity there. Maybe they're just not talking. Maybe they just don't want to interact with you. As my friend Rez calls it, stupid human tricks. We want them to do the same thing over and over and over so we can prove scientifically that they are there. And they don't care. They don't care what we're trying to prove. Not on them. They don't care. They don't want to talk. They're not going to. So, there is that too. So just because you're not getting any type of response when you're trying to communicate with spirits that might be somewhere where you can feel it, there's something going on, but they're not communicating, it's because they don't want to. They don't want to perform a stupid human trick for us. And you know what? That is 100% their right. They can do that. So I would also like to say, if you have any paranormal stories that you would like to share, please send them to me. Please send them to me at psychiccristina67@gmail.com, and I will share your stories on the air. So, I really want to thank you all for watching this, but I also want to get into the comments and see if you have any questions that you would like for me to answer. So I'm just going to click out of this right now, and here we go. Let's see, we got some comments here. Anthony is the only one that I can see commenting. Anthony, thank you for showing up. A stupid human trick is a good way to see that. But if anyone else has any comments or questions, please feel free to ask them. And if we're done with the show before you get a chance to ask them, that's fine. You can just send me an email again at KristinaBloom67. Scratch that. PsychicChristina67@gmail.com. Yeah, I'm going to put that into the chat because I've probably confused you all already so much. Let's see. At gmail.com. There you go. There's my email address where you can send your stories or questions, and I will happily share your stories. Please feel free to reach out to me to make an appointment, either at that email address or on my website, KristinaBloom.com. I'd like to thank you all for your time, your attention, and I hope that you all have a great week. I know this show is a little bit shorter than normal, but that's okay. I really just appreciate your attention, and take care, and I'll see you all again next week.